I'm going to touch few concepts here. Most of you, I think you already know about it, but it would be nice to recap understanding of certain terminologies that we use. So I would be clarifying the concept of calories, basal metabolic rate, the factors affecting basal metabolic rate, then what is total daily energy expenditure, what is total calorie restriction. And you will hear a lot in the email conversation when I'm saying your TEE is this, or your TCR is this, or your BMR is this. What is actually physical activity? And there is probably you guys all know about what is thermogenic effect of food is, but you actually don't know that it's the name of this thing. So we'll talk about that. So calorie is a single unit of energy that determines that basically it is the amount of energy that provides heat to a kilogram of water. That's how we determine it. And calorie with a capital T is almost equivalent to kilocalories. Every food that provides us energy, it has the amount, and that amount is usually calculated. And now in a sophisticated, industrialized, developed countries like we live in, they have actually put the mark of calories in it. And now we have determined each natural substances that are found, how much energy is there in that food that provides it with that energy. That's what calorie means. BMR or RMR, resting metabolic rate and basal metabolic rate, they are almost the same. In simpler words, it is the least amount of calories or energy your body needs to sustain vital body functions. So if we are sleeping and our heart is working, our brain is working, our kidneys are working, they need energy. So what is the amount of energy they need in order to survive? Right? So that is what basal metabolic rate means, that we are not doing any activity, we are just sleeping, we have closed our eyes, and our body is burning some energy, burning some calories. What is that calorie? This is, we call it basal metabolic rate or resting metabolic rate. Now, when we open our eyes and we're out of the bed and we're doing certain activity on a daily basis, then that amount of calories that we use when we are doing certain activity, this is called total energy expenditure, or where you will hear about total daily energy expenditure. That means the amount of calories you need in order to maintain the current weight that your body has. That's simply what it means. Now, some people, they are not active. So in order for us to calculate the TEE or TDEE, we multiply by an activity factor. So basal metabolic rate multiply by an activity factor, and that activity factor, either you can be sedentary, or you are slightly active, moderately active, or super active. Then there's an activity calculated. So in my program, when a patient comes in, I calculate their basal metabolic rate through a formula. I always use an activity factor of least activity, which is sedentary. That's it. Because whatever you're burning, I consider that as a bonus. So that activity factor for sedentary is 1.2. So that's what I usually use. So TEE is the amount of calories that you need in order to maintain your weight. Then total calorie restriction. Total calorie restriction simply means that you are making a deficit either by 500, 700, 1000 from the TEE, and that gives you total calorie restriction. So when I give you a budget, I usually tell you TCR, total calorie restriction on a daily basis. That's TCR is. However, the body does not recognize daily calorie deficits. No, it doesn't. It doesn't sense it. It's not that smart enough. It does the calorie deficient cumulatively. So 7 days. Then body see, every day there's some calorie deficit. Oh, 200, 300, 400. And by 7 days, technically I'm talking about, then it sends out, and then it's, oh, I have lost, there has been a total of like 7,000 calorie deficit or 3,500. And if it's a 3,500 calorie deficit, 1 pound shuts down because 1 pound requires 3,500 calories, that energy. Then body recognize it, and then you see a weekly. That's why we don't see, if it's an adipose tissue loss, it's not every day. Water can be every day because water loss, you go in the washroom, you pee out, water is out, weight is less. But adipose tissue makes time. So total calorie restriction is subtracting from the total energy expenditure. Are we clear on that, everyone? Moving forward, physical activity. So physical activity means any kind of activity. Either you do a voluntary activity or you do involuntary activity. Now, what does involuntary activity mean? You're sitting down and you're fidgeting your feet every time. Some people just fidget a lot. That also will burn down your calories, right? So involuntary movements and voluntary movements both are count under physical activity. Then there is something called as thermogenic effect of food. Whenever we eat something, as soon as we put in our mouth and the time to exit from the bottom end, it requires calories in order to process that food. So chewing needs calorie, swallowing requires calorie to burn down. The enzyme comes in, they chew out. Then the small particles, molecules, and the molecular level we're talking, each and every step requires that calories, and that is consumed, and it is stopped from the basal metabolic rate. So this is what we call a thermogenic effect of food. And in most simpler words, in TEF is actually we add up in basal metabolic rate. So talking about the total daily energy expenditure, it comprises, as I told you, it's the basal metabolic rate. So when we're talking about basal metabolic rate multiplying by the activity factor, but there's a small part that I would like you to understand, that most of the time, the total TEE is comprises of the BMR and the physical activity, as well as there's a thermogenic effect of the food. So if I combine the thermogenic effect of the food and basal metabolic rate, that's why you will hear the word that the BMI consists of like 60 to 70%, because the thermogenic effect of food is included in it. This sometimes it's in our hand that we can change it. So thermogenic effect of food means amount of calories it is required in order to metabolize the food that we are eating, from the very macro level to the micro levels. This sometimes is in our hand to change it. Like, for example, something that we eat that easily absorbable, something that we eat may take time to process it, and then Shaistha did mention that how the whole grain takes time to disintegrate in our stomach, and it takes time. So the time that is required for it to absorb, the energies are being used, right? Protein needs more time as compared to carbs. So thermogenic effect of food is dependent on the amount of food that you're eating, the composition of the food that you're eating. Plus, there's something in thermogenic effect of food that is not in our control, like certain hormones that we come in, certain enzymes that comes in. So some of this effect is modifiable. Does that make sense? So the TEE is comprises of BMR, and then in BMR you can add in the thermogenic effect of food and the physical activity. Now, the people who ask most of the, what is the thing that I can change in my, how can I make my basal metabolic rate changeable or increase it? So now you will get the answer. What are the things that are in your hand and what are the things that are not in your hand? So let's talk about, we did talk about TEF, that the thermogenic effect, what things you can change. Yes, the things that we can change the amount of food. We can change the composition of the food. For sure, we can take more protein, more whole grain. It will take longer time to digest, but certain hormones, we can't change it. Whatever our genetics has made it, that we cannot change, because some people have certain hormones that will speed up the metabolism, and some people have a slow hormone thanks to the genetics. So this is in BMR, what things we can change. So BMR is dependent on these factors. So we have body weight, we have height, We have muscle mass, age, gender, hormones, and the nerve drive, sympathetic drive. So let's see what things we can change. Can we change our height? Can we change our gender? Can we change our age? Can we change our height? So these are the factors we can't change. There are certain hormones that we cannot change, the way they process it. So only thing that we can change here is, yes, the body weight. So we know that the body size, the more the size, the more BMR. The less you go in your size, the less calorie you need in order to sustain your function. So we might need to calculate, if you have lost 20-30 pounds, you might need to recalculate your BMR again, recalculate the TCR again, because you may require lesser energy, right? So body weight, so this is modifiable. Mass, so the more muscle mass you have, the more muscle needs in order to sustain them. So that's why we emphasize on a fact that you, rather than the cardiovascular component, you should be doing some resistant activity to build up the muscle, build up the lean muscle. So muscle requires more energy. So the more muscles you have, the more energy you will be consuming. And again, we know that the genetics have a role in play in hormones and how the nervous system works. Now you know how you can change your BMR, and we also know that the environment, temperature, the way you live, and time and the these all things do have an effect on basal metabolic rate, but not like a huge amount.